The grand hall lay hushed beneath swelling candlelight, as Lady Isobel's heart pounded in her chest like a war drum. She stood at the altar's edge, ivory gown trailing down marble steps, while the hush thickened until it shattered with a single trembling whisper. "Mother?" No soul stirred. The bride's voice trembled against vaulted arches. Across the hall, the Alpha, Lucien, stilled mid-step, his obsidian eyes widening as if confronted by a phantom. Every guest froze, goblets poised mid-air. A distant storm rattled leaded windows, thunder echoing the chaos swelling in Isobel's veins. She took a trembling step forward, ivory veil slipping to reveal a shock of dark curls and a face nobody had seen for 20 years. Lucien's jaw clenched, the ornate chandelier quivered overhead. In the flickering glow, Isobel's knuckles whitened around a crumpled locket. "You promised to protect me," she said, voice cracking. Murmurs rippled through noble families, in embroidered silks. In that frozen moment, betrayal and blood bound together, and the bride who was no one's daughter became the center of a secret that would shatter an empire. Silence fractured as the heirloom photograph hovered in midair, pressed between trembling fingers. Isobel's voice cut through the hushed reverence. "Father never spoke of her." Lucien's shoulders slumped, the gathered nobles shifted uneasily. A single raindrop splashed onto the stone floor, a heartbeat in the stillness. Isobel stepped forward, revealing a portrait of a woman in moonlight, eyes like hers. "You knew," she said, pain and accusation mingling. Lucien's gaze flicked to the carved pillars, memories buried beneath polished stone. He swallowed hard, throat tightening. Candlelight flickered across his uniform's metals, reflections of battles fought and promises broken. Noble women gasped. Men in gleaming armor stiffened. Each breath felt heavy with unsaid truths. In that moment, lineage became a weapon sharper than any sword, and the wedding, meant to unite kingdoms, became the stage for a secret war. A distant thunderclap shook the hall as Lucien's voice finally emerged, low and pained. "She was lost to me before I could save her." His words fell like stones. Isobel's eyes flashed with betrayal. Murmurs of Alpha's daughter rippled among guests. Velvet drapes rustled as a wind gust swirled through an open archway. Lucien's gloved hand trembled, fingertips brushing the locket's chain. "I believed her dead." He paused, jaw clenched. Isobel pressed forward, velvet gown whispering against marble. "You lied to me." Noblemen exchanged uneasy glances. Noble women clutched jeweled fans. Candle flames leapt, casting dancing silhouettes along vaulted ceilings. Outside, lightning forked across the sky. In that charged hush, a father and daughter stood on opposite sides of a legacy built on silence and shadows. Isobel's chest heaved as she confronted her would-be husband and estranged father in one figure. Noble onlookers leaned forward, breaths caught between heartbeats. "How many lies have you built this life upon?" she demanded, voice ringing like a clarion. Lucien's gaze dropped to the marble floor, guilt etched into every line of his face. Candle guttered, wax dripped in slow tears. Isobel turned, scanning the faces of friends now foes, her voice softening with sorrow. "I was hidden for your safety." The assembled crowd tensed. A distant owl cried from the eaves. Through the stained glass, moonlight cast her shadow long and thin, a silhouette of betrayal. In that stark tableau, a daughter challenged an empire's founder, and the wedding vows lay shattered at their feet. A hushed gasp rippled as Lady Ariane, Lucien's wife-to-be, stepped forward from the shadows. Silk skirt whispering, she lifted a trembling hand. "She is my sister," she said, voice barely above a sigh. Every eye darted between the two women, one in ivory, one in sapphire. The hall seemed to hold its breath as Isobel's mouth fell open. Lucien's expression flickered between relief and despair. Lightning flared, illuminating Ariane's face, shock mirrored in her dark eyes. Behind them, candles flickered in unison, as if the very air trembled at this new betrayal. In that electric moment, alliances shifted, and destinies were rewritten. The Alpha's daughter emerged not as a pawn, but as a catalyst for a war of blood and vows. In the pale dawn light, Isobel lingered alone in her private turret chamber, the wind rattling leaded window panes as if impatient to speak. Silken tapestries hanging from stone walls whispered tales of her mother's vanished legacy as she paced, leather boots echoing on cold flagstones. Her breath caught at the sight of a carved wooden cradle, eliciting memories she had been forbidden to voice. Each heartbeat thundered with longing, for a family she never knew, for truths buried beneath courtly smiles. She pressed trembling fingers to the cradle's worn edge and spoke softly, "I deserve to know who I am." A single sunbeam pierced the gloom, illuminating motes of dust, dancing like lost hopes. The hush swallowed her words, yet in that solitude she felt her purpose sharpen, to unearth the daughter hidden by power and lies. Every echoing footstep seemed to urge her forward into a world that had pretended she did not exist. Isobel emerged onto the training yard, morning mist curling around sharpened steel, and oiled leather targets lined beneath an overcast sky. She gripped her father's old sword, its weight a reminder of battles fought for lands that ignored her existence. Each measured strike echoed like a demand for recognition. She would prove her worth not with whispered secrets but with sharpened steel. Sweat beaded on her brow as her blade sang through the fog, heart pounding with righteous fire. A distant horn sounded for the nightly drills, but she remained focused, muscles coiling and releasing in a rhythmic crescendo. Fellow trainees paused to watch the lone woman who moved with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a soldier. In every arc and thrust, she fought not just for mastery, but for the right to stand before the world as Lucien's true heir. Later that morning, Isobel found Heir in the castle gardens, rose petals carpeting flagstones beneath ancient oaks. Heir knelt to inspect a wounded bird, her sapphire gown folded around her like moonlight caught in silk. Seeing Isobel approach, she offered a tentative smile, voice hushed. "I never thought I'd find a sister." Isobel's chest tightened, vulnerability flickered in her eyes. They stood shoulder to shoulder, as Heir gently cradled the bird's wing. "I want to know you," she continued, "all of you." Isobel exhaled, a weight lifting as secrets began to unfurl in shared silence. The two women glanced upward, where sunbeams broke through clouds, illuminating petals drifting like whispered promises. In that quiet haven, a bond formed stronger than vaulted walls and deeper than age-old betrayal. In his private study, Lucien stared at a sealed parchment bearing the royal seal. Candlelight danced across his fur-lined cloak as he traced the edges of the wax with a gloved fingertip. Every silent tick of the brass clock reminded him of time stolen from his daughter. Summoning courage, he rose and strode toward the open window, wind whipping his dark hair. He whispered into the night air, "I will not hide you again." His reflection shimmered in the glass, king and father locked in a silent struggle. Below, torches glowed in the courtyard like beacons of hope and danger intertwined. Lucien clenched the parchment in his fist, resolve hardening. He would dismantle the walls built by his own fear and reclaim the daughter he had abandoned. Isobel descended the grand staircase to the central courtyard, torchlight flickering across polished marble as nobles gathered in curious clusters. Her leather gauntlets brushed the banister as she steadied her racing heart. Raising her chin, she addressed the assembled crowd with unwavering clarity. "I am not a hidden truth but a living heir." Gasps rippled through onlookers. Horses whinnied nearby, clinking armor punctuated the charged air. Isobel's voice rang out, echoing against arched colonnades. "Reveal your secrets, and I will claim mine." Lucien stepped forward, chest bare to his vow, every eye turning to the father who dared stand with his daughter. In that crucible of history and defiance, a new chapter began, one written in blood, courage, and unbreakable truth. A week after her public declaration, Isobel strode into the council chamber at midday, torch sconces cold and unused in the bright sunlight spilling through arched windows. The chamber's marble benches curved around a central dais, where Lucien sat, flanked by robed counselors whose faces flickered with uncertainty. Isobel's leather gauntlets tapped against the stone floor in measured cadence as she approached, back straight and jaw set. Every noble present held their breath while courtiers whispered of treason and succession. She raised her sword in salute, steel glinting under crystalline light. "I stand before you not as an usurper but as your rightful heir," she proclaimed, voice steady. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some heads bowed in respect, others stiffened in protest. Lucien inclined his head, pride and fear warring in his dark eyes. In that charged assembly, the daughter's claim fractured centuries of tradition, and the first seeds of civil war took root. That afternoon, Isobel rode north of the keep into wind-lashed moors, hooves striking against rain-slick stones. Clad in a dark hooded cloak, she urged her steed onward through gray mist that clung to low crags. Each gust drove her cloak taut like sails in a storm, mirroring turmoil within her chest. She recalled Arian's whispered counsel: seek allies among those who suffered under rigid rule. Across a windswept ridge, she spotted tumbled cottages and smoke rising from distant chimneys. Approaching the village, she dismounted with quiet strength and knelt to meet wary faces lined with hardship. "I come to offer protection and truth," she said, voice carrying over damp air. The villagers exchanged glances as curiosity and hope stirred among them. In that blasted landscape, the Alpha's daughter took her first steps toward forging a rebellion born of empathy and justice. That evening in the village great hall, torchlight flickered against rough-hewn beams as Isobel shared bread and ale with farmers and craftsmen. Faces gaunt from hunger glanced up, hope trembling in their tired eyes. She laid bare her lineage, and the injustices that had flourished in silence, voice warm, yet tinged with steel. A burly blacksmith rose, knuckles white as he gripped a hammer in silent oath. A seamstress wept quietly, pressing a hand-woven cloth into Isobel's. "We will stand with you," the blacksmith rumbled. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall like gathering thunder. Outside, wind howled against shuttered windows. In the flickering glow, bonds of loyalty were forged from shared despair, and a ragtag alliance began to coalesce beneath the Alpha's daughter's unwavering gaze. Under a moonless sky on the castle ramparts, Lucien confronted Lord Marcellus, whose folded arms and narrowed eyes betrayed scorn. Rain pelted the stone battlements as Lucien's cloak whipped around him like dark wings. "You sow division with your whispers," Marcellus accused, voice sharp as drawn steel. Lucien's hand squeezed the rampart's crenellations. "I seek only unity through truth," he replied, voice low. Lightning flickered across the battlements, illuminating Marcellus' scowl and the distant village lights below. Suspicion crackled between them. Was Marcellus a traitor stirring rebellion, or a loyalist testing his resolve? Each man stood rigid, raindrops tracing the lines of authority and doubt on their faces. In that silent standoff, loyalties trembled on a razor's edge, and the castle's walls became both shield and cage for a kingdom on the brink. At dawn's first light, Isobel rode back to the keep with a small host of villagers at her flank, banners improvised from dyed cloth, fluttering in the chill breeze. Lucien awaited her at the iron gates, torches guttering in the fresh morning air. Their eyes met, father and daughter reunited under unsteady alliance. She dismounted, cloak muddy from the moor, and offered a hand to him. "They will follow if we stand together," she said. Lucien pressed her hand against his chest, over the heart that had feared her claim. The villagers paused beyond the gates, uncertain yet hopeful. In that quiet exchange, old wounds began to mend, and a united front emerged. As gate hinges groaned open, the dawn bathed them in rose-gold light, heralding the rise of a kingdom reborn under the Alpha's daughter's banner. The castle bells tolled beneath a blood-red sunset as Isobel marched into the great hall, armored gauntlets clinking with each determined step. Noble banners hung limp along cold stone walls, their silk threads dulled by months of secrecy. At the dais, Lucien stood in regal vestments, eyes shadowed by worry, as courtiers whispered of rebellion and betrayal. Isobel raised her chin, voice echoing off vaulted arches. "There is a traitor in our midst." Gasps rippled through the assembly. Her accusation severed silence like a blade. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows on anxious faces. She stepped forward and held aloft a blood-stained glove she had found in the royal stables, fingers wrapped around leather soaked with evidence. This glove belonged to Marcellus, on the night our villagers bled. Lucien's brow furrowed, Marcellus' stiff posture cracked with fury. In that charged moment, alliances fractured and the true battle lines were drawn beneath the trembling light of flashed torches. Under moonlight in the deserted stables, Isobel confronted Lord Marcellus amid damp hay and broken stalls. His cloak lay discarded, mud caking his boots. She pressed the glove against his armored chest, voice low but relentless. "Explain this." He spat bitter laughter, eyes flickering with defiance and shame. Rain dripped from the roof, each drop echoing like a heartbeat in the quiet. "You meddle where you do not belong," Marcellus snarled, stepping back. Isobel advanced, blade drawn in a flash of steel. "I belong to the truth," she replied, rain dripping onto the blade's edge. Marcellus' crimson gaze met hers, haunted by conscience and ambition. In the cold gloom of the stables, father-daughter bond shattered under the weight of vengeance and justice. Dawn broke over the battlements as Isobel led a covert strike team through silent corridors. Shattered doors marked their passage where Marcellus' loyal guards had been dispatched. Each heartbeat pounded like war drums as they reached the treasury door, iron hinges creaking under hushed breaths. Isobel held aloft a stolen key, voice a razor-edge whisper. "Our kingdom's secrets lie behind this gate." The lock yielded, metal groaning as gates swung open to reveal chests of gold and sealed scrolls. Torches flared to life, revealing Marcellus waiting with drawn sword, eyes furious. They clashed steel, sparks flying in the gloom as echoes of combat reverberated through stone halls. In that furious dawn, corruption and greed met righteous steel in a battle that would shape the realm's fate. In the throne room's eerie dawn afterglow, news of Marcellus' treachery spread like wildfire. Isobel and Lucien stood side by side as messengers delivered sealed letters from neighboring lords, their crests smeared with ink and blood. Lucien broke a seal and read aloud an ultimatum demanding swift justice or civil war. Courtiers gasped. Some dropped to trembling knees. She caught Lucien's gaze, resolve tempered by love. "We must act swiftly," she declared, voice firm. Lucien's hand closed over hers. "Together we will purge this stain." Outside, trumpets bled their call to arms. In that tenuous dawn light, father and daughter forged the war council that would either save the realm or destroy it. On the ramparts at dusk, Isobel trained troops gathered under the banner she had designed, a silver wolf howling at a blood-red moon. Their armor glinted in the fading light as they knelt in silent tribute. Isobel's voice rose above the hushed crowd. "Woo, fight for truth, for justice, for every voice silenced." Swords rattled against shields, anticipation humming in the air. Lucien emerged from the gatehouse, cloak billowing behind him, and raised his sword in salute. "For our daughter's future," he proclaimed. A thunderous cheer shattered the dusk's calm. In that moment on the cold ramparts, the armies rallied not under fear but under hope and defiance, ready to challenge the darkness that had long held their realm in shackles. At first light, the two armies faced each other across a misty plain, banners snapping in a chill breeze. Isobel rode forward on a black destrier, silver wolf banner trailing behind her like a promise of vengeance and justice. Each cavalryman knelt as she passed, eyes shining with fierce loyalty beneath iron helms. Lucien stood on the ridge, cloak billowing, sword lifted to signal the advance. The thunder of hooves and marching boots rose like distant thunder as arrows arced across gray skies. Isobel drew her sword, heart hammering in her chest, voice steady. "For truth." A chorus of steel rang out as infantry surged forward, pikes bristling like iron forest. Dust and churned earth flew in the gale, mingling with cries of defiance. In that charged moment, father and daughter charged side by side into the maelstrom of war, every heartbeat an oath bound in blood and honor. Steel clashed beneath rolling thunder as opposing lines shattered into brutal hand-to-hand combat. Isobel's sword arced in precise, deadly strokes, each thrust and parry echoing years of secret training. She ducked beneath a lance and drove her blade into a knight's breastplate, sparks flying as metal. Around her, armor dented and shield splintered, cries of triumph and agony colliding in the haze. Lucien's war horn sounded, rallying fresh troops who surged into the fray in gleaming phalanxes. A volley of arrows arced overhead, black feathers drifting like ominous petals. Isobel's cloak snagged on a fallen standard, ripping in the tumult. She shrugged it free and pressed on. Every strike rang with purpose, to shatter tyranny and seize a future born of truth rather than fear. In the chaos near the shattered battlement, Isobel faced Lord Marcellus atop overturned shields and broken pikes. His cloak was torn, face streaked with mud and blood, eyes alight with spite. She dropped into a guarded stance, voice cold steel. "This ends with us." Marcellus sneered and lunged, blade flashing. They traded strikes in a deadly dance, each clash ringing off the broken stone walls nearby. Rain began to fall, each drop hissing as it struck hot steel. Isobel's arm burned from deflecting his assaults. She twisted, sending Marcellus stumbling into a gout of sparks from a shattered lantern. He snarled, recovering his footing. Around them, battle raged in thunderous crescendos. In that fierce duel, daughter and traitor battled for the soul of the realm. Marcellus' blade sliced toward Isobel's unprotected side, but Lucien intervened, throwing himself between them with a roar. His sword slammed into Marcellus' gauntlet, forcing the traitor back. "You will not harm my daughter," Lucien bellowed, voice carrying over clashing steel. Isobel staggered, chest heaving, then regained her footing beside him, eyes blazing with gratitude and fury. Marcellus hissed and lunged again, this time at Lucien's exposed flank. Father and daughter moved as one. Lucien's riposte creating an opening that Isobel seized with deadly precision. The traitor crumpled, blade clattering across the stones. Around them, a hush fell over combatants, broken only by distant thunder. In that violent interlude, blood debt was paid and justice claimed beneath flashlit skies. As dawn broke through battered clouds, Isobel stood atop the shattered gatehouse with Lucien at her side, the enemy's banners trampled beneath their feet. Exhausted soldiers raised her silver wolf standard in victorious salute. She lowered her sword and surveyed the field, smoke drifting over broken pikes, the dead laid respectfully in rows. Lucien placed a gauntleted hand on her shoulder. "You have forged a new legacy," he said quietly. Isobel exhaled, voice trembling. "May truth guide us always." Below, cheering rose like a tide of renewed hope. In that final moment of battle, the Alpha's daughter claimed not only the throne but the hearts of a kingdom reborn from ashes and blood. Dawn's golden rays filtered through the shattered remains of the battlefield, revealing rows of weary soldiers, tending wounds, and raising makeshift shelters amid splintered siege engines. Isobel walked among them, her once pristine armor now chipped and stained with dust and sweat. She paused at a battered cart, where a young orphaned boy, male, tens, offered a crust of bread, eyes wide with gratitude and fear. Dropping to one knee, she accepted the offering and pressed a gentle hand to his shoulder. "We will rebuild," she promised, voice soft yet resonant. Around her, soldiers straightened blades in salute, hope flickering in tired gazes. Lucien stood nearby, surveying the scene with a mix of pride and sorrow etched across his face. As church bells tolled in distant villages, the survivors rallied under their banner, forging unity from tragedy. In that tentative calm, the Alpha's daughter sowed seeds of renewal where once only ruin had grown. In the war-ravaged Great Hall, artisans and laborers worked side by side to repair shattered pillars and replace burnt tapestries. Isobel oversaw the efforts, her gauntleted hand guiding a mason, male 30s, as he measured a new column's base. Marble dust formed a pale haze in the afternoon sun streaming through broken windows. "Every stone laid is a promise kept," she said, tone both firm and hopeful. Courtiers who once whispered doubt now offered tools and materials with bowed heads. Lucien joined her, placing a wreath of fresh ivy upon a reconstructed arch. Together, they watched as courtyard bells rang to mark the restoration's progress. In that quiet labor, justice and mercy found equal footing, and a kingdom's foundation was reforged in unity. At the village square, Isobel and Ariane distributed grain and cloth to families who had sheltered their troops. Children, male and female 6-12, clustered around them, clutching sacks of meal. Ariane knelt to tie a young girl's, female, 8 shoelace, smiling with genuine warmth. Isobel's voice rang clear above the gentle murmur, "No one shall starve while we stand." A farmer, male 40s, grasped her hand in gratitude, eyes misting with relief. Under a pale midday sky, the sisters symbolized hope reborn. Nearby, a bard strummed a lute, weaving a song of victory and compassion. In that sunlit gathering, the scars of war began to fade in the glow of generosity. In the courtyard of the rebuilt keep, Lucien convened a council of allied lords beneath fluttering banners. Sunlight glinted off polished helmets as they took their seats at a long oak table. Isobel stood before them, parchment maps spread at her feet. She traced a route through borderlands, marking safe trade passages. "Our neighbors will join us in peace," she stated, voice steady and clear. The lords exchanged approving nods, quills scratching on vellum. Lucien watched from the archway, pride shining in his stern features. In that moment, strategy became diplomacy, and the kingdom's future was charted on worn maps and hopeful hearts. As dusk fell, a grand feast unfolded beneath garlands of fresh ivy and lanterns, glowing like captive stars. Long tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, fruit, and honeyed cakes. Isobel and Lucien sat side by side at the high table, raising goblets of spiced wine in salute to their people. Music rose from lutes and flutes, as laughter wove through the fragrant air. Ariane passed goblets to guests, her sapphire gown shimmering in lantern light. Isobel stood, voice ringing with warmth. "To unity, to truth, to all who dared stand with us." A chorus of "To Isobel" erupted. In that shared celebration, grief and conflict gave way to joy, and the Alpha's daughter's reign began in harmony and hope. In the hush before dawn, Isobel stood alone on the highest tower balcony, the kingdom's banners stirring in the cool breeze like silent witnesses to her reign. Below, the courtyard lay empty, lanterns dimming as their fires faded into embers. Her gauntleted hand rested on the balustrade's carved wolf head, the stone smooth beneath her fingers. Thoughts of victory and loss swirled in her mind. Friends who fell, villages saved, the daughter she once hid now crowned heir. She inhaled the crisp air, chest rising with purpose renewed. A lone owl called from distant woods, its cry echoing across mist-shrouded rooftops. Isobel closed her eyes, remembering her father's promise and Ariane's gentle smile. "We did this together," she whispered, voice carried away on the wind. Opening her eyes, she gazed eastward where the sun would rise, heralding not just a new day but a new era forged in truth and unity. In the silent royal chapel, torchlight flickered against ancient frescoes as Isobel knelt before the altar to offer thanks for those who sacrificed everything. Her satin-lined cloak pooled beneath her, silver threads catching the warm glow. She pressed her palms together, head bowed. The hush felt sacred, broken only by the distant drip of a candle's wax. Visions of her mother's lullaby fluttered through her memory, mingling with Ariane's soft laughter. "Guide me," she prayed, voice echoing like a vow within stone walls. The scent of incense curled upward, carrying her plea into the high vaults. Rising, she felt the weight of destiny settle around her shoulders, not as a burden, but as an honor she would bear with every breath. Emerging into the courtyard's amber glow, Isobel found Lucien waiting beneath a newly planted oak, its sapling branches trembling in the breeze. Soldiers paused in their dawn drills, eyes following her approach. Lucien stepped forward, placing a hand on the young oak's trunk. "This tree will grow as our kingdom does, stronger each year," he said, voice thick with emotion. Isobel knelt to press her palm against the bark, feeling its life pulse beneath her fingers. Around them banners fluttered and trumpets sounded the hour. Together they stood, father and daughter united, witnesses to renewal both in soil and soul. The oak's slender silhouette framed them against the rosy sky, a living testament to legacy reborn. As dawn's first rays gilded the keep's towers, Heroine appeared at Isobel's side, holding 2 slender chalices of spiced mead. She offered one to her sister, smile bright with unspoken pride. Isobel accepted with a nod, their hands brushing in a gesture of unbreakable bond. Around them, gardeners arranged blossoming wreaths of ivy and wildflowers on stone benches. A gentle breeze carried petals through sunbeams, drifting like promises fulfilled. To what comes next, Heroine toasted softly. Isobel raised the chalice, her gaze steady and full of hope. Their silent cheers rang clear in the cool air, a celebration not just of victory, but of sisterhood, truth, and the promise of a future written in unity rather than secrets. A hush fell over the courtyard as the first rays of dawn gilded the battered cobblestones, and Isobel stood atop the carved stone dais, where once the banners of war had flown. Her gauntleted hand rose to her breastplate, breath catching in her throat as memories of battle and bloodshed washed away in the gentle light. Around her, the assembled citizens, soldiers, villagers, nobles, held their breath, eyes fixed on the young ruler who had borne their hopes through darkest nights. Isobel's chest rose with a slow, steady exhale. Her voice, soft yet certain, drifted across the morning air. "We are home." In that single resonant phrase lay the promise fulfilled and the journey begun, a kingdom reborn from ashes, bound not by fear, but by the truth that had set them free. As a gentle breeze stirred the fluttering pennants overhead, tears glistened in many eyes, and a murmur of agreement swept the crowd like a wave. In that sacred moment, the Alpha's daughter claimed her throne not in conquest, but in quiet unity, and the dawn's golden warmth sealed the covenant of peace she would honor all her days.